You're good to go, Christina.
Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this wonderful conversation with Jacinda Townsend. I'm Christina Hughes. I am the founder of Birthing by Your Design and Diamonds for Doulas. I'm also a nurse, a birth doula, and recently I have become an author of a memoir. I would like to introduce Miss Jacinda. Jacinda Townsend is an acclaimed author of three novels, Trigger Warning and Mother Country, which won the 2023 Ernest Gaines Award for Literacy. Um, her debut novel, Saint Monkey, received the Janet Heinger. Oh,
Heidegger.
yes. Prize in the James Fenimore Cooper Prize for Historical Fiction and was named an honor book of the Black Caucus of the American Library Association. A former broadcast journalist and antitrust lawyer, Townsend's not- nonfiction has appeared in Al Jazeera and The White Review. Jacinda's work is known for its intelligent emotional precision and deep engagement with place, history, and human complexity. Today, we will be talking about Mother Country, a novel that asks readers to sit with some of the hardest questions about maternal longing, moral, and what it means to claim or care for a child. This is a novel that gives us so much to sit with, you guys. It's a story about two women whose lives become bound to the same child across Morocco in Kentucky. Through these beautiful, complex characters, the novel asks difficult questions about motherhood, longing, possession, survival, race, class, power, and what it means to care for a child ethically in an unequal world. This novel also invites us to think about how our own wounds, histories, and unmet needs can shape the way we love and sometimes distort the love and what it looks like. We are so glad to have Jacinda Townsend with us to talk about this remarkable book. Miss Jacinda, would you like to
Thank
add
you.
anything to that wonderful intro?
I just want to say it's so nice to be here with you, Christina, and with everyone who's joined us. And just so it's so thrilling to me when Marie invited me to come on because the reason I wrote the book was that I had a less than perfect birthing experience myself, and it took me a very long time to sort of get over the trauma, and it is why I wrote the book. And no one has ever asked me to talk about that. So this is really wonderful, and I thank you.
Okay. I first want to start off with what drew you to tell a story about motherhood. I know you said that while you wrote this novel, it was very healing to your own motherhood journey. So I wanted to know if you would share more about how writing this book became healing for you.
Absolutely. So when I started the book, I always start my novels with one sort of political question I'm asking myself and one more kind of personal one. So the political part had to do with when I was a Fulbrighter, I did my Fulbright in Cote d'Ivoire, and one of the trips I took out the country was outside of that country was to Mauritania. And while I was there, I met with a family of escaped slaves. I met with anti-slavery activists. So Mauritania, until very, very recently, the population of Mauritania, 20% of it was actually enslaved, brutally so. It was just as brutal as any slavery in the history of slavery, you know. Very hard to escape because most of that country is the Sahara Desert. And until it wasn't until 2008 that slavery became illegal there. And so part of what I wanted to write about was just, to bring awareness to that situation. But the more personal part is that I had my first kid in 2004. She was an emergency C-section after 27 hours of labor. I had planned to have an epidural-free natural birth. That did not happen. And then when my second child was born, let me back up and just say that it was traumatic for me. You know, I had a lot invested in the idea that um, I could control this process and it was all going to go exactly the way I had planned it to, and that if it didn't, I was a failure. And that's how I felt for a long, long time. And then I had my second kid, and the practice, the OB/GYN I saw had said that she would consider a VBAC. At the end, she refused to consider a VBAC. And I had worked really hard because my second kid was actually positioned, I forget what that's called when they're upside down. And so I had
Breech.
done, yes, I had done everything you're supposed to do. I put headphones on my belly, I turned her around, I got her turned around, and then they still said they would not do a VBAC. And they kind of um, really kind of bullied me into another C-section. Um, so it took me a minute because that trauma kind of just doubled the trauma. And it wasn't until that baby was maybe about a year old that I really felt like their mother. I felt like I had failed at the critical moment, and Mary Poppins was maybe gonna show up and help me. But until then, like I just didn't feel like their real mother. And then finally, my then husband one day he was like I got so busy. I was like changing diapers, parenting a 5-year-old, doing this and that. And he was like, you really seem like a mom now. And I was like, okay, because I am. So I wondered like because I think a lot of women go through this, and it's not necessarily birth trauma. It may be other things. It may be that somebody told you you'd be a bad mother. It may be that it can be any, there's a whole panoply of reasons why we go through this, right? So I wondered if I spooled this out to the nth degree, um, how long it would take you to feel like someone's mother if you kidnapped them from another country, right? And so that's how I got the idea to write the book. And it was really healing because I think at the end of the day, being a mom is very much about often what you did when that child was born, whether it went according to plan or not. But the realization that even when it doesn't go according to plan, you are still being a mother. You are still making affirmative choices for the well-being of that child. And then all the moments thereafter as well. That was very healing to me. So.
Okay. Um, from the beginning, did you know that you wanted the novel to resist simple moral categories?
Absolutely. So there's a passage actually because in I know a lot of people kind of walk away with the idea that Souria herself is purely a victim, but I wanted to establish that in fact, like not only does she have a lot of agency, but she's not a saint. And there's a passage. I'll just read a little bit. She is out in the desert in Mauritania, and she laughed as they released her older brother's roan goat from its thick ropes and then chased her across the desert. In the jeep, driving 20 kilometers an hour, they wore the goat down, slowing when she slowed, sometimes stopping the jeep to give her hope, then speeding up again behind her just as she caught wind. After 3/4 of an hour, the goat stopped, wide-eyed and braying, her knees buckled in exhaustion beneath her belly. Cerise's younger brother got out of the jeep and roped the goat back into imprisonment, this time with her fore and rear legs tied together on a wood post. He shoved her face first into the back of the Jeep where they'd put down a matted tarp. She never stopped braying, and Souria bragged back at her in her small girl's voice, setting the inhabitants of the Jeep to laughter. Um, so, in so many ways, there's a lot in the book that is sort of an American's ability to sort of exploit a situation. But in fact, and I won't spoil the end. The end is a lot. But Saria, in these small ways, becomes complicit in her own victimhood at various points. It's like I try not to write complete villains or complete saints. And so just as I wanted people to empathize with Shannon's predicament, I wanted them to understand that yes, Saria's not she wasn't exactly perfect either. If for no other
Hmm.
reason than I think total villains and total saints make pretty boring characters.
Yeah. So, how consciously did you mean Shannon's emotional history to shape and like how she imagined motherhood itself?
Yeah, so her parents are not the most, they're not the most loving, soft place to land kind of parents. Like there's this scene where she comes upon her parents discussing her, and she's had like a bad report card, and her dad unfolds the report card, and he says, waste of a child before folding it in force and throwing it back in the fireplace. And then she coughs to let him know she's there. And she says, Dad, I'm not stupid. It was just a lot this year. And he says, I know, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were sitting there. And then her mom actually, so this isn't too much of a spoiler, but at the beginning of the novel, Shannon is in a really terrible car wreck. And that's how she finds out she has this fertility issue. And her mom at the end of that scene says, they're going to fix her, but she has no business being anyone's mother, no business at all. And so there's a lot going on. Yeah, I think to some extent she is, there's a lot going on. She's under a lot of pressure to have a kid because her husband wants her to have a kid. So when she finds this
Mm.
kid, it's the perfect it's the perfect solution.
Yeah.
But also I think she is trying to solve some of her own deep-seated issues with her
Hmm.
mother. And there's later in the book, she and her mom get in this fight, and she says, all those years I never asked you to be my mother, and all those years you weren't, and now you go and do this. Her mother dipped her head slightly, looked up with her eyes gone crepey with age. I was never your mom, she asked in a voice gone yarny and soft. She looked like a wounded animal, and Shannon closed her eyes to remember her as a younger, harder woman in order to say it. I'll tell you one thing, you don't get to be the same kind of crap as a grandmother. And so she is trying to, and I think I've always thought we parent either in as a pushback to our own parenting or as we're either like responding to our own parenting or we're sort of like trying to stay in its groove, or and sometimes
Hmm.
both. And I think Shannon is very much reacting to the motherhood she didn't get as a child, in trying to just kind of break the cycle. And I think if you kidnap a child who doesn't even speak English, like you really get to start fresh, right? So
Hmm. Yeah. So, at any point in writing Shannon's character, did you worry that like readers might see her as a villain or miss the deprivation under her choices?
I think a lot of people do, and I'm always surprised when people, because sometimes people have asked me, who are who was your favorite? And I say, I think it's obvious it was Shannon. And I think that Shannon, and this is one thing I kind of wanted to say with the book is that I think um, we often think of privilege as this sort of, it's like a ladder, right? It's like, okay, there's this woman who was enslaved in Mauritania. Obviously she has so much less privilege than this American woman who's come over on a business trip. But in fact, like, the American woman doesn't have that much privilege. I mean, she's trapped in her own various ways. And I think also there's some interrogation to be made about how, like, I know people like to throw around this thing of like, oh, Americans are so privileged. Like, we all have
Mhm.
TVs, we all have oven, we all have refrigerators and whatever. But in fact, like, even in that privilege, there's a way in which a lot of people in this country are very oppressed. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's
Yes.
all relative, and it's all um it's no less insidious, just
Mhm.
because it's happening somewhere else on the ladder as opposed to this part of the ladder. And so I kind of wanted
Mhm.
to point that out to you. There's very early in the book, you find out she is so indebted. She's got all this student loan debt. She's got like $150,000 in medical debt. And I think that is very real in this country,
Mhm.
that there are a lot of people who are really, really struggling in a way
Yeah.
that maybe isn't recognizable to someone in Mauritania, but it is perfectly
Mhm.
recognizable to us. So I
Yeah.
hope that complexity came out, and yeah, she makes a bad choice, but I must say she was put on the edge of the cliff there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You have spoke about how like strong your mom was with leaving her marriage and building a career and being very active in community. Um, Tell us more about that journey with your mom and
Yeah.
you and how all of that might have played into some of the writing that you put into Mother Country.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my mom, who she transitioned right around this time last year, actually, and she and I were so close because I was her only kid for about 10 years, and she was a single mom. So she had left her marriage when I was about two. She just one day she decided she'd had enough, and she loaded all our stuff in this yellow station wagon, and she drove us from Lynchburg, Virginia, which is in the Blue Ridge. She drove us all the way through West Virginia and the Appalachian Mountains, and we ended up in Kentucky, and that's where she raised me. And, she was the person who taught me about matriarchy, basically, which I think is what I'm also doing now. I'm a single mom of two girls. And she was very kind of adamant about making it by herself. She did not want to get married again. But one thing she did when she got back to Kentucky is she got an MA in English literature. And one of the books that she read and kind of it's I was ridiculously little when she passed this on to me because she would let me read or watch or whatever. And it
Mm-hmm.
was The Doll Maker. And have you heard of The Doll Maker? It's
No, I hadn't heard of the doll maker.
Okay, they made it into a movie eventually, but it's this story about a woman who she leaves Kentucky and she goes up to Michigan, and she's trying to hold on to like the old ways. She's making these dolls out of corn or whatever, and she's like trying really hard to feed her family. And I remember my mom was like, before she gave it to me, she was like, "This is the way she put it, she was like, this is the saddest book about
Mhm.
about this subject." And I think even then what I got out of her saying that to me, she said, this book is so sad I didn't even want to read it. And I mean, it's a classic, it's a really good book.
Mhm.
But what I got out of that is that people like to people like to treat certain situations as nothing but trauma, as opposed
Mhm.
to there's a lot of resistance in that story. There's a lot of, and so that's what I, as a writer, have tried to explore. That um, all my books are about women, really, and all the women are in various forms of crisis, but they're not taking it sitting down, and so there's I hope that there is some sort of liberation that readers feel when they read my books. What is your memoir about, by the way?
My memoir is about my pregnancy journey and pregnancy losses. I had experienced three, and then having HELP syndrome, which is a variation of preeclampsia, and then having my daughter, and then what my postpartum journey looked like, and kind of
Mm,
how it led me to start Diamonds for Doulas and host support groups and community baby showers, and just kind of like a full circle of how that I end up being a community doula and working in
nice.
community outreach and all of those things.
And that's nice. I bet that was very healing to write as well.
Yes, extremely healing.
Oh,
Yes, yes. So
God.
I can definitely like um I feel where you're coming from, and it's like you're sitting and you're writing something and it's healing, but you're also like using it as a teachable moment, which is
Hmm.
I think is awesome how you've taken privilege in this book, and we're able to see it through different lenses, because I had never really thought about, you know, someone from overseas thinking that, Americans have this much more privilege whenever I work in community outreach here, and I
Hmm.
see where people are really struggling.
Hmm.
And so I thought that that was like an interesting lens to be able to look at privilege through, because I think it's a lens that we don't often look through, as far
Yeah.
as just really thinking about what privilege actually looks like, because it doesn't
Hmm.
really have a face or a color. It really doesn't have like just a textbook look or
Right.
textbook description. Like it's very different.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so one of the things that I had been thinking about is like how you really meant for Shannon's actions. Like what did you want readers to take away from some of the actions that she did in the novel?
Um, yeah, she's really not a saint. I think just to some extent, this is a story about two women who are doing what they need to do to get from point A. Um, and they are having to do it because there's a whole system, there's a whole patriarchy, there's a whole economic system that has just conspired to sort of um, keep them oppressed. It's like for
Mm-hmm.
Souria, it's this not only legal system that allows slavery, but this cultural system that sort of just allows her to, as a girl, be sold off and ignored and then
Mm-hmm.
sold into sex work, and she cannot
Mm-hmm.
escape that. There's no legal framework for her to even be a Moroccan citizen. There is certainly no frame. There's no way in which like the Moroccan police are going to help this woman who is an immigrant, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and with Shannon, it is she took out these student loans. She gets a degree that's not making her much money. She marries Vlad because she needs dental insurance really badly, which is
Mm-hmm.
that's the American way, right? Like you have to
Mm-hmm.
do what you have to do sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I think like they're both, neither of them is saintly, but neither of them is really a villain. I think at the end, Saria makes a really, really tragically hard choice that is going to help her and her other child stay comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and I won't give that away, but that it was hard to write, and yet I think that is so real. I think we all do that, as parents and just as people all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Whenever you were writing the novel, like, what did the novel teach you about the difference between love and possession? And also, what did you want the readers to take away as far as the difference between love and possession?
Yeah, it is hard to talk about this without giving away some plot, but I'm gonna try. So when Souria sees in the very first chapter, when Shannon sees this child in an alley who she is then going to take, she has this reaction that's kind of like a cat watching a bird. Her heart beats a little faster and she kind of tunes into this child. And then when the child starts interacting with her, it's almost like she's caught her. And I think that before you have a kid and you have no conception of what it is like to actually not have the child, but have the child with you, right? I mean, even the verb have, like, we're having a baby, we're going to have
Mm-hmm.
the baby. That's not quite how motherhood is, right? It's like
Yeah.
the baby has you, first of all.
Yeah, everything
Like,
revolves around the baby.
exactly. It's like having a cat. Now the cat has you, right? It's very
Yes.
similar. But also just that to love is a verb, and it's a verb that is just so expansive. And I
Hmm.
always think, because now my kids are so old, they're 21 and 16. And I feel like they've raised me. I feel like
Hmm.
there's so much I didn't understand, even when they were 10 and 15, that I understand now. But certainly, like when they were 0 and 5, I really did not understand, in some sense, that difference between possession and love.
Hmm.
I think like one kind of concrete example is just when your kids get to that age where the choice will never be yours, and I think it comes so
Hmm.
early, right? It comes so much earlier than you think it's gonna be. Like it could, like, I am not wearing that. I am not, one of
Yeah.
my kids, I'll tell you a funny story. So one of my kids, when she was 12, this is the older one, she told me, we moved to California, and she was like, I'm not black. And I was like, okay, like, are you biracial? Because her dad is white. I was like, okay, are you biracial? She's like, no, I'm Japanese. I was like, okay. So my older friend was like, you know what? She's tried to push your buttons in every other way, but this is the one she knows is gonna really bother you. So she was like, I want you to just roll with it. So I did, like, I started taking her to anime on the weekends, and we got Japanese food. And within 2 weeks she was black again. But it's kind of like they just they aren't gonna let you have them, right? And I think
Yeah.
that happens so early, and then you have to learn, like you have to learn this like force of nature that is
Yeah.
just in some
You have
ways
to
like,
learn how to let go. Because my
right?
daughter's 7 and now she's going through the closet, which I have always strategically picked out her clothes for the weekend. Now it's like, I don't want to wear that. That doesn't go together to me. I want to wear
Hmm.
this. And I'm like, your night clothes? No, let's not do
Yes.
that. But
Yes.
I'm learning to let go and
Yeah.
let her make some decisions within reason on her own.
Yeah.
But I can agree that her personality and how she takes charge of things. It took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to have a little person that had personality from literally the day she got here. So
Yes.
it happens quickly, quickly.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
as moms, like the possession part of it, because I had never thought about like being possessive, but like in just sitting through this in real time, I'm like, wow, I do spend a lot of time saying my daughter, my child,
Hmm.
like my. Yes. And she's the same way, my mommy, my dad,
Yeah.
so like the love also comes with position, which is really, really, really interesting.
Hmm.
And so I spoken with you before we joined this webinar, and I know you said you had spent some time in Morocco, and the research that you had done in slavery, on slavery, and um did that shape, well, obviously it did, but how did it come to shape the emotional and political lens that you have inside of this novel, or what you wanted the readers, what lens you wanted the readers to see or
Yeah.
look through for this novel?
So I had, I had my own ideas about slavery, as I think most people in the world do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I got there, it turns out that no, not everyone in the world has those views, and like
Mm-hmm.
one thing I learned that really upset me is that a lot of slaves feel like what it is the will of Allah that they are enslaved. And that's one other reason that they don't even try to escape. I mean, I would say the bulk of it is that it's just so hard to live in the Sahara, and it's like really hard to transit I mean, it's very hard to get out of there without a lot of help. But also, there's only, in Mauritania, there's only one television station and it's state run. So, and most people are illiterate. So their sort of idea of the world, and I tried to capture this with Souria. Like Souria doesn't even know, she doesn't understand how the moon really works. To her, it comes up, it goes down, it comes up, it goes down, it dictates all these things. But um, when I had a reader for the like not necessarily a sensitivity reader, but a reader that made sure the Arabic was correct. And when he read it, he was Mauritanian because I wanted to make sure it was in that dialect and everything. And he actually said, well, people don't see how there's slavery everywhere. And kind of the way he said it made me think that he was also one of these people who saw this caste-based slavery as like kind of some sort of norm.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me like just knowing that from the outset, like when I had visited with the people in Mauritania, made me really complicate the book more, I think, because there is a sense in which if you have that attitude, um, you're doubly victimized, because
Mm-hmm.
you then are holding yourself in oppression. Um, and I hope that that came through in the book as well, that um, yeah, it's a really ugly system. And I think even, as descendants of slaves, I think there's a little bit of that in America. There was always a little bit of that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're not gonna run away unless Harriet Tubman pulls out the gun, right? Right? Like there was always
Yeah,
some of
kind of
that.
just conditioned, but
Hmm.
also, like you said, they felt like it's the will of Allah. And we know that, like, in America, Christianity was used a lot to kind of condition slaves to remain in slavery.
Hmm.
So, that was really interesting to me when you just said that religion is used in different places to kind of condition people to do what it is that the government wants them to do. So that's very
Hmm.
interesting.
Hmm. I'm just
Um
reading the comments from Marie. Yeah, she says your daughter has so much fucking personality. And the
yes.
truth, from the moment the child arrives, your time is no longer your own in the same way. Your body, your thoughts, your decisions begin to reorganize around someone else's needs. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Were there any parts while writing the novel that was extremely hard for you? To make it either
Yeah.
through writing it, or was it any times that you had to pause and say, I'm just gonna take a break and then come back?
Yeah, I think the sex slavery stuff was hard for me to write. And I had to kind of do a lot of self-care those days, you know. Part of why it was hard to write, there was some personal history that made it hard to write, but also that was a thing that I had seen in Morocco, like kind of up close, and understanding. So similarly to the slavery, I saw it. Um I witnessed some transactions. You know, there was a summer we lived in a part of Marrakech that's kind of known for that. And then sort of doing the research around why Morocco kind of turns a blind eye to that, you know, because it is a huge part of tourism in Morocco, actually, is that business. And so knowing that what I was writing was just so searingly real made it hard, you know. And I think that's been true with all my books. Like Trigger Warning is about police brutality, and I had talked to like Tamir Rice's mother and some other mothers who survived, and just knowing that what I was writing was like a fraction of what some people have to endure is was hard. That was hard for me to write. And I think that when you are writing about something really traumatic like that, and you're thinking about the reality and at the same time manufacturing your own sort of plot around it, it's like it's going to the worst yet the most necessary part of your imagination, right? That's a lot in a day.
Yeah.
So I try to, you know, I dip out after a couple of few hours and drink some tea.
Do a lot of self-care.
Yes. Yes.
Um, what when you wrote the novel, what was it that you wanted readers to take away after finishing the novel? Like in its entirety.
Yeah, so the end is like I say a lot. I did not that was not a first draft ending. I had to really think about that, you know. I have this mantra of hurting as many people as possible in a novel, and I think the end hurts like everybody. Nobody walks away whole from that ending. And I think though it's at the same time I hurt everyone. I think, and I'm just gonna read the last paragraph, which I don't think gives anything away. But and I think about this a lot. It's a small and manageable planet, and Morocco is only 11 hours of flight time away. But even if mom can never afford it again, even if the woman who carried me is lost to me for this lifetime, a life might not be such a long time. When I start calling out to my mother to come get me, I'll be lucky. I'll be talking to them both. And that is that mother is the the word mother, the role mother is kind of subjective in a way. It is the person who gives birth to you. It is the person who carried you. It is the person who shaped you. It can be other people in other realms, in other places, you know, and also that because there's a return at the end, and I won't give it away, but I know when my mother was transitioning and she had dementia, and we've talked a little bit about how you don't have the baby has you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that the same can be true with our mothers. Like, when my mother turned into a different person, because she really basically turned into a different person. She was a happier person when she had dementia. She's a much different person when she had dementia. And I no longer had her, and as I no longer knew her the way I had known her as my mother. She was still very much my mother, and she wasn't at the same time. And I think, like, because she had dementia for such a long time, I began to look for mothering in other places, mostly in myself,
Mm-hmm.
because it was a very, very, very slow decline, like 15-year decline, in which,
Mm-hmm.
like, I would try to call her and talk to her like she was my mom, and she just wasn't. And so I think, like, it's so, birth is like so determinate and biology is so determinate, but also it's so loose. It's so,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I feel like, and I know one thing I will say, so the cover is, I didn't draw it. There's no way I drew it, but it was kind of my idea. And the reason I wanted it is because I was like, look, if you have a book that's called Mother Country, people are gonna think um people are gonna think it's like, the Real Housewives of whatever, right? So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I want a woman smoking a cigarette, because this is a lot of what Shannon does with herself is she's smoking. Oh, that's not much of a spoiler. She's a total stoner. She is such a This is how she even ends up with this kid in the first place, right? Is like she's a stoner.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think, like, the cover is sort of emblematic of this idea that, like, motherhood is so complicated and complex, and it's like way grittier than we give people credit for. I think, like, we like to think of motherhood as this, like, this state of, like, blissful, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm their mom. I'm gonna, like, and it
Yeah.
totally isn't. It's like at the end of the day, like, I don't smoke weed. Like, one of the reasons she's such a stoner is that I myself don't smoke weed, but I do other things at the end of the day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, motherhood is extremely and intensely gritty and real, and,
Yeah.
like, the emotions that we all have, that we would not dare say out loud, are like they're daily, right? And they're
Yeah.
reoccurring, and
Hmm. And
and it makes
in my work, I'm actually in our support groups. We are making it a space for people to say those things out
nice.
loud and
Oh,
talk through
good.
them, because I always say that people like to think of motherhood as rainbows and lollipops. Like, it's always happy, it's always a rainbow, it's always a cakewalk. And in some ways that has set us up to have a false sense of what motherhood is. And
Yeah.
so when you start to have those emotions this not happy, you question yourself about whether you're a good mom or a bad mom whenever you're not. It's just nobody prepared you for these emotions in motherhood. They made it seem like it's gonna be all happy all the time. And that's a
Mhm.
false sense of reality for motherhood. I'm sorry. I mean, we all love our kids. We all love being moms, but some days I feel like I'm in the trenches
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
survive. And
Yes.
that's a normal part of motherhood.
I love that you're making your group a safe space for that. I feel like that's a thing, like, Um, I remember when my kids were little, we would do that in intense privacy, right? It would just be you and two friends who did that out loud,
Hmm.
right? And I love that you're making this a group space thing.
Yeah, that's like it's group led and we talk about any and everything, but I think it's important to acknowledge that these type of emotions are gonna come, instead of making
Mhm.
it seem like you're always gonna be happy at every single stage of motherhood. You're not. It's
Yeah.
just the honest truth. um
Yes.
well, Mother Country is amazing,
Thank
and
you.
I love a good book club. I'm a part of a few. If you were to sit in like on a book club, what would you want them to discuss about motherhood, Mother Country, the novel?
Um, Probably the ending. And anybody who's read the ending knows what I'm talking about when I say that. I think that both of these women make questionable choices, and at the end, um, the sacrifice that's made is kind of morally questionable, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think they both end up in a morally questionable place by the end of the book. And I guess, you know, if I had to answer the question like who did the right thing, I would say both and neither, but I don't think anybody thinks that but me. I
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm almost sure that nobody thinks that but me, because I think people get to the end, and a lot of people I've noticed take one side, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I never felt good at writing endings, but they always just happen to me. And then I always find, like, when I do visit book clubs, that people are really mad and upset at the ending. So,
Mm-hmm.
I remember with my first book, these two characters end up together who, like, just really shouldn't. They shouldn't, and yet they totally should, in my head, be together.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I went to this book club, and these women were like, "What is wrong with you? Like, how did you let this happen?" I'm like, "Oh, because
Yeah.
to me, like, that's what totally should have happened." But yeah, I
Yeah.
would love to know if people um, were mad at the ending. I always love to ask that question at book clubs, you know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That, yeah, I've read a few books where the ending I was like, oh, why? Like, I would have loved to ask the author, like, what in the world were you thinking? So I'm glad that, like, you would actually want to know what people think about the ending. Um,
Yes.
Thank you so much for that. And before
Yeah.
we wrap up, do you have anything you like to share? Any final thoughts or closing remarks that you want to leave the audience with today?
Just that, first of all, I so appreciate you all, and thank you for reading. Um you always wonder when you're writing a book, and as you're sitting alone writing this book, and you wonder, like, will it really touch people? And so the fact that it does is, like, just wonderful. It's like, it's why I do this, and I just appreciate you all so much, and thank you for joining us today. And thanks to Marie for this powerful, powerful week. And thanks to you, Christina, for everything you are doing in this space and in your space. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacinda. Thank you so much for joining in and, having this needed conversation around Mother Country and this amazing novel that you wrote. For our audience, I would like to say thank you all so much for joining in with us today. Your presence and support are vital as we look forward to a future of safer birth for everyone. This is just the beginning of a week-long series, and we have many more impactful conversations ahead. We hope to see you back here later today and throughout the rest of the week as we continue these amazing conversations. For the full schedule and more information of how to stay involved, please visit saferbirthsnow.com. Thank you again for being a part of this wonderful community.
I just have to thank Jacinda and thank you, Christina. I've been in the chat I told just for those who don't know, Jacinda made a comment on someone else's Facebook post or something of that sort, and it resonated with me. So then I rarely do this, but I stalked her. I went to her Facebook page, and it's like, who is this woman? And then I saw that we shared that we're both native Kentuckians and that she was an author. So I looked at her book, and I ended up buying Mother Country. And then I really stalked her because then I reached out and said, "Oh my God, this book, if you haven't read it, you must." She plays with your emotions. She plays with your mind. I love it. I've read it twice now. And it is hard. I appreciate how you said there's there's good and bad. And I think what was interesting is, and I think I shared with Jacinda when I was telling my dearest about the book and that he knows I stalk people. And I was talking about Shannon out loud and and he assumed, so many of us do, that when we talk about this type of life, he assumed she was white.
Oh. Hmm.
And so I was reading like one of your interviews or what have you, and you made a comment about privilege, and that's really why he thought she was white.
Oh. Huh.
So, and it was
Huh.
like so much so that he made me go back and question myself, like, no,
Uh-huh.
she's not white. Where did we get
Uh-huh.
this from?
Right, right, right.
Isn't
Which
that crazy?
well, I'm glad if
Yeah.
someone interrogated that too. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. If anyone else has read the book or has comments, I did grapple with the ending. I did. I Wilma Stark says she really enjoyed the book. Um, Wilma, do you want to share what one of your favorite passages or and then I'm going to share the link for the rest of our series. Thank you, Christina, for hosting Jacinda. I couldn't do it. I was too fangirling. And so I'm glad Christina was able to interview her. I would have been horrible. We don't have the ability to put you guys on camera, but you are welcome to react to the book if you've read it or ask questions. I know Wilma said she enjoyed it. We will have this recording for those who were not able to join. I had a lot of my friends on the West Coast who were like, "Girl, this is 9 a.m. We're at work." So we are recording it and we'll share it. And maybe we can get Jacinda to come back and talk about trigger
Yeah,
warning was it's not
yeah.
one I've finished yet. I had to put that one down.
Thank you,
Um,
Wilma.
and just to, I normally like love stories, and you hurt me with the ending.
And I gotta say, I feel the need to defend myself that sometimes I think writers like Shannon was just my girl. Like in some ways it was like whatever she did wrong, I was like, it's okay, girl, you're my girl, and
Yeah.
I think that sometimes like that's just how it gets to be, like, and you get to the ending and you're like, oh, my girl's not gonna lose. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna
I
let
could
her.
I could see it with what she had been through as a child. And I didn't villainize her parents either. I
Mhm.
think part of it for me was coming from a place of my parents. My father was 54 the year I was born,
Oh, wow.
58 the year I was born. So he came from a completely different, think about, I'm almost 70.
Yes.
Think about how old my father would have been. But they
Yeah.
came from a place where coddling your children or they weren't necessarily abusive, but they were not this. My mother was a snuggly person, but daddy was not. And he would have been that one with the report card. That
Yes.
resonated for me. I felt that
Yes.
in my soul
Yeah.
because you did not come home with a B.
Yeah.
And that whole mindset of you have to be twice as smart as they are, and you have to,
Ticket.
yes. So
Half as far.
and
Yep.
so how that leads us and I didn't blame her for her relationship with Vlad. She was very practical about it. Maybe some of us
Mhm.
need to be more practical about our loves.
Absolutely.
But we
Yes.
are, so I liked I think they were complex characters, and I did have to go back and really like do some Google searches on the whole slavery thing, because I
Mhm.
didn't know that until 2015, or well, I guess 2007, 8, but then 2015 was like the final straw or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's
I
the other
mean,
thing I loved was learning. Your book was, we learned about a country that I just sort of knew
hmm
peripherally. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, they really the government, well, it's such a remote country and it's hard to even get the visa to get, and so they were able to keep slavery like a secret for a long time, right? Yeah. um,
So how did you pick that country as a place for
It
your?
was wild. I saw a CNN article, and I think that CNN article, it came out in 2012, and it was the first a lot of people knew that there was slavery in Mauritania, and I just had to go. So I found two of the people mentioned in the article. They were anti-slavery activists, and I found them, and I was like, I'm coming, and so I got a tourist visa to go. And it was great. They hosted me. They introduced me to a woman who she had 8 kids, and all the 8 kids had different fathers because her master had like leased her out. And she had escaped slavery with this baby. She had the baby on the way out of the desert. And Marie and Christina, I got to hold the baby. The baby was like about a month old. She slept through the whole thing. But I got to hold her and have this feeling of, I used to like weep while speaking of it because it was like, this was the first person in that family born free. And it was such a powerful feeling that like, this is the one who will grow up free. Like, and to know that like, at some point one of my ancestors was that first person to be born free. It was like,
Mhm.
whew, it was a powerful trip.
Oh, that gives me chills. That gives me, I mean, just so much to 8 children that were not your choice. But
Imagine.
that's a whole other exploration of
Yeah.
motherhood, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I know there's a lot more. We'll have to invite you back. We got to talk about it.
Yes.
We'll invite you back after everyone's read the book.
It was so nice talking to you all. Have a good day. Have a good week. I will see you at another Zoom.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so
Yes.
much,
Thank
everyone.
you
No, I'm
so
gonna
much.
Bye, everyone.
bye. Thank you.